Take the platforming of Super Mario 64, add in some temples from Ocarina of Time, and the combat from both Hollow Knight and Dark Souls, and you'll get Blue Fire, a new 3D indie platformer that's all kinds of challenging and fun. It's available on Nintendo Switch and PC right now, and PS4 and Xbox One later this year. While its story isn't its strongest suit, it's certainly much more understandable than, let's say, the typical narrative from a From Software game. Long ago, 6 gods peacefully ruled over the kingdom of Penumbra, though that era of peace didn't last. Sadly, the 6th god became greedy with power and overthrew the rest of the gods. Now in their dark and corrupt state, the 5 other gods guard the remains of the fallen kingdom while the 6th god reigns supreme. We play as Umbra, a warrior of light and darkness tasked with taking on the fallen gods, freeing them from their chains, and bringing balance to Penumbra. While the overall story didn't nearly captivate me that much, I did fall in love with the little personalities I met along the way. Don't get me wrong, talking to these gigantic monsters that were once gods now turned evil felt almost like my first time playing through Shadow of the Colossus. I loved that. But I was really entertained by the little NPCs I met along the way. Like the little innkeeper who's just trying to run their own business, but upstairs there's a thief trying to steal everything in the building, while the innkeeper's daughter claims to be the brains of the entire operation. There's just a lot of smaller stories within this world that, despite not being entirely relevant to the overall story, I thought helped really sell the authenticity of this world. As I mentioned before, Blue Fire feels like a bunch of different games thrown into one, but at the forefront of it all is platforming. Umbra is a small little warrior that starts off being able to run, jump, and attack. Their moves are simple, but like any good Metroidvania game, it'll grow over time. Within the first few hours of playing, I had unlocked a dash ability, a double jump, and being able to wall run. All these elements, including a bunch of other unlockable moves, continuously fleshed out the platforming, which is the real challenge of this game. Sure, there's combat, and we'll get to that later, but very much how indie darling Celeste masterfully crafted a hard platforming game, Blue Fire is building a name for itself under the same moniker for 3D platforming. Blue Fire's vastly interconnected sandboxes are filled with platforming segments that'll have you traversing floating platforms, dashing through spiked walls, and wall running away from lasers. It's vigorously challenging, but a lot of fun. That's thanks to Blue Fire's ever so precise platforming. For example, holding down the shoulder button lets you perform a dash, but the length of that dash varies by how long you hold down the button. There's certainly a learning curve to it, but over time, I was speeding down platforms that scared me at the start of the game, now mastered and on my way to whatever new thing the game was about to throw at me. Luckily, the varied platforming continued on throughout the rest of the campaign, which took me well over 10 hours to finish, but I'm sure that'll vastly vary on your skill level. However, part of it is also going to be because of the oddly placed spawns. Like a campfire in Dark Souls, you can find these statues throughout the world that'll let you heal yourself, save the game, and even activate spirits that act as buffs for your character. The thing is, these statues cost ores to activate. They're the glowing ores that come out of breaking the pots around you. I didn't mind this too much until I found myself in situations where I would spend my ores on an item or an upgrade, and suddenly travel so far that I eventually found the next respawn statue, but sadly without enough money to activate it. If I died during the next boss fight, not only would I need to fight the boss again, I'd have to traverse at times a whole previous era and a current area just to try to fight the boss from the current area again. I had nights where I straight up just gave up playing because I didn't want to backtrack that far. I had to take a break and recompose myself before trying again. Part of it I'm sure was probably my bad management of ore spending, but there definitely could have been better statue placement or at least cheaper prices. Nevertheless, I found myself coming back to Blue Fire with a sense of determination. The challenge was there, but it was never enough to get me to think that this game was being unfair with what it was throwing at me. Now, traversing these sandboxes, I slowly realized just how much these felt like temples in Zelda. Large mazes made of interconnected rooms hiding away secrets, locked chests, and puzzles that needed to be solved in order to proceed. Sometimes this meant finding a key, or just using your consistently growing moveset to find a hidden path. I thought these were well thought out, especially the void challenges. Voids are these confined challenges scattered across the game. They're essentially platforming challenges separated from the main quests and a handful of the side quests that you can unlock while playing. They're oddly enough somewhat reminiscent of those levels in Super Mario Sunshine that took away the Flood Pack. Now, outside of platforming through temples, unlocking new powers, and taking on void challenges, you'll be doing quite a bit of fighting here. Each temple-like area is filled with a variety of monsters that kept changing. For example, early monsters were just smallish creatures that scurried toward me and exploded. Later creatures involved flying monsters that could shoot shockwaves and lasers at me. Basically, for any move that I unlocked, there was a monster there to make sure I learned how to use it properly, or else I'd die. Those lessons through combat culminated in boss fights with the 6 corrupt gods that were just as fun to go through as the platforming challenges that led up to them were. All in all, Blue Fire presents itself as a jack of all trades and sort of a master of 3D platforming really. While I thought its platforming was phenomenal, other aspects like the dungeon puzzles and the combat were good, not on the same level as the platforming, but complementary to it. The large variety of side quests along with the main quests meant there was a lot to do outside of just continuing on fighting. It even introduced some other classic genres like collecting items for NPCs. The level of personal customization from spending my ores on new cloaks and emotes was also a great bonus, especially when I started to use the built-in camera tool, which was a lot of fun. With such a cute and lovable looking little protagonist, I was a bit shocked to see the world design in Bluefire. While our little hero is short and stout, the world around him is fierce and dynamic. I traveled through a destroyed kingdom, a lush forest temple, and a frozen graveyard just to name a few locations. Each of these locations felt slightly more realistic than the characters themselves, especially the water, but the juxtaposition didn't really feel clashing at all. I liked the contrast and the attention to detail to craft these various atmospheres. While playing on PC, I didn't run into any specific performance issues. The gameplay ran fine and I was able to max out the game fairly easily with my GTX 1060 PC setup. However, I did have the game crash on me once and a few bugs like drowning in water when there wasn't any water there. Those few oddities aside, Bluefire performed great, though I wasn't able to get an early Switch copy to compare results, so if you're gonna pick this up on Switch, just keep that in mind. Bluefire's music offers such a variety of tracks that match the sprawling landscapes you'll visit. In the forest you'll hear a slow, almost fantasy-like tune that feels like you're back in the world of Zelda or Fable. Suddenly you'll visit the remains of a monochrome looking castle and the music changes. The ambiance is now grim and ominous. This happened frequently while playing, and the game's ability to transition between these scenes without some sort of contrast clash, I thought was remarkable. Little actions all have sound effects done as well. Hearing my character catch their breath as they dash midair, the little pitter-patter of their footsteps, and the rain leaking through the cracks of the building I was in were all subtle touches that were able to sell me on this living fantasy world. While there wasn't any spoken dialogue, for the most part, I liked the developer's choice of adding these N64-like mumbles to represent the spoken voice. It was a great touch. Bluefire is a fantastic game that more than certifies its spot as an entertaining, challenging platformer. It offers a variety of elements from many classic genres that only further adds to its charm and its replay value. If you were a big fan of what Celeste did for 2D platforming, I think you'll love what Bluefire does for 3D platforming, and for $20 and the amount of content you get, it's not a bad deal. Thank you so much for checking out this review. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, then make sure to show your support by giving a like and subscribe. I also have a Discord server which is linked in the description, a community filled with a bunch of people that watch my videos, all of us just playing games and talking, so feel free to join if you haven't already. Thank you all very much for watching, I love you all very much, and I'll see you all in the next video.